The strange thing about real wartime survival is that the most important lessons rarely show up in official manuals. Veterans held on to certain tricks, tools and habits because they weren't glamorous, they weren't standard issue, and they definitely weren't something officers wanted recorded. They were simply the things that kept men alive when everything else failed. And before we get into the list, if you're watching from the Iron Age Instincts community, make sure you subscribe right now. This channel exists for people who take history seriously, respect the men who lived it, and want to extract real, usable knowledge from their experiences. Now let's get into the items WWII soldiers relied on, but rarely spoke about. Tools that reveal how experienced men actually survived the dirt, cold, hunger, and chaos of the front. Why soldiers quietly carried sewing gear even when they had no intention of sewing. To modern ears, it sounds ridiculous that a needle and a few feet of heavy thread could rank among the most critical survival tools. Yet anyone who has studied frontline diaries knows these tiny items saved more misery than half the equipment in a standard rucksack. Experienced soldiers didn't use them for tailoring uniforms. They used them to reinforce boots, tighten pack straps, repair shelter quarters, and secure gear in ways military supply officers never imagined. When leather started separating, laces shredded, or canvas tore open, improvised stitching made the difference between staying mobile or being forced into dangerous resupply trips. For modern survivalists, this is more than a historical curiosity. A simple repair kit is still one of the most overlooked essentials. The practical application is straightforward. First, carry a curved sail needle and wax thread, since it grips better in wet conditions. Second, learn 2 or 3 strong field stitches. Third, practice repairing boots or packs before heading into the field. In WWII, men who handled repairs early prevented catastrophic failures later. The lesson hasn't changed. How soldiers relied on hidden fire-starting materials far more than their issued gear. Issued fire kits were unreliable, especially in wet climates like the Ardennes or the Pacific. So soldiers quietly hoarded alternative ignition sources, waterproof matchbooks from home, scrap wax paper, slivers of inner tube rubber, and even tiny chips of solidified grease wrapped in cloth. These weren't luxuries. A soldier who couldn't make heat or boil water had bigger problems than the enemy. Fire also served as a psychological anchor, especially during long static nights or winter deployments. Applying this today is simple but honestly quite important. Don't rely on just one fire method. Always keep redundant systems, store them in different pockets, and, protect them from moisture. One effective Second World War trick was folding a small piece of rubber inside cloth, so that even if the cloth got soaked, the rubber would still ignite when paired with a spark. That method still works, even now. In a cold environment, it can absolutely mean the difference between having functional hands and suffering from frostbite. Why did soldiers trade for or secretly carry small sharpening stones? Well, sharp tools in the Second World War weren't just for fighting. They were, really, for daily survival. Soldiers sharpened mess kit knives, bayonets used for digging, and even entrenching tools used to split wood and cut saplings for shelter. When these tools dulled, men found themselves wasting energy, damaging their gear, or simply unable to improvise what the moment required. That is exactly why many frontline soldiers kept pocket-sized sharpening stones tucked deep in their gear, even if it meant carrying a bit of extra weight. The modern takeaway is, well, gear without maintenance is almost useless. If you carry a blade, make sure you carry a sharpening tool. Start with a small dual-grit stone, or perhaps a compact diamond plate. Keep it dry and honestly know how to use it before you ever enter the field. Sharpening is a skill, not just a last-minute trick, and Second World War veterans who survived longer often had the discipline to keep their tools ready every single day. How soldiers used hidden rations and why they never admitted it. Rationing systems always look clean on paper, but anyone who has studied logistics knows the reality-issued rations didn't always arrive, especially in mobile operations. Soldiers quietly stashed extra calories, chunks of hard candy, biscuits, chocolate, dried meat, not for comfort but for moments when official supply lines broke down. They rarely spoke about it because hoarding food technically broke regulations, and officers frowned on anything that looked like undermining discipline. Yet in the field, these hidden rations kept men alert, prevented energy crashes, and allowed them to keep moving towards safety. This is honestly one of the easiest lessons to apply today. Carry emergency calories that resist heat and moisture. Rotate them every few months just to be safe. Store them in different pockets so you know the loss of one pack doesn't wipe out all your reserves. And just like the soldiers who lived through winter retreats and broken supply chains, treat these calories as last resort fuel, not as snacks. Why did soldiers value simple cloth strips more than, say, half the medical kit? Well, one of the most revealing survival items was nothing more than strips of sturdy cloth. Soldiers cut them from torn uniforms, blankets, tarps, or even spare shirts. These strips served as pressure bandages, wound coverings, slings, water filters, cordage, and, in a pinch, emergency fire starters. They were adaptable, quiet to use, and really never ran out of utility. Veterans rarely mentioned them because they seemed too basic and perhaps too unheroic to record. Yet they solved far more day-to-day problems than most official medical gear. For the modern survivalist, this lesson is, well, pretty direct. Carry multipurpose cloth. Something as simple as a triangular bandage, a cotton shemagh, or just durable scrap fabric can stabilize an injury, reinforce a shelter, bind gear, or even become tinder in wet conditions. Don't overlook tools simply because they look humble. The most experienced soldiers certainly didn't. These 5 items show how survival in World War II was shaped by quiet improvisation, not just issued equipment. If you want more deep historical breakdowns like this, right here on Iron Age Instincts, make sure you subscribe, share this video with another history buff, and, well, keep the knowledge alive for the next generation of serious researchers.